Welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts Travel Podcast, the show that gives you advice on everything travel. We explore places you've always wanted to go, as well as giving tips for traveling in those places. We'll give you advice on the best sites for travel tips, information, and discounts. Join us as we travel the world, explore cultures, and meet new people. The Golden State Media Concepts Travel Podcast has got you covered.
Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Travel Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Emily McDonald, and I'll be talking to you about all things travel on the show. Today, I'm going to tell you a story that I witnessed firsthand while traveling in the Everest region of Nepal last May. But before I tell you that, I need to tell you a little bit about Nepal and what is going on Everest. Let's start with the basics. Mount Everest is the tallest mountain in the world, coming in at 29,029 feet. Its native Tibetan name is Chomolungma, meaning Goddess Mother of the World, and if you ever get the chance to see it, you understand why. Everest has a unique placement as its summit is perfectly split between Tibet and Nepal. Everest also sits in the Himalaya mountain range, which, to my surprise, is rich with so much culture. I spent my time on the Nepal side of the Himalayas, where I was fortunate enough to be able to do about a 2.5-week hike and research project through that area. And traveling here has really made me realize how much hustle and bustle happens on the trails. You see, farming is very popular here, and the only way up or down is by trail. I'm talking no roads, no cars, not even any wagons, and so there's this constant foot and animal traffic happening year-round. In fact, something I can remember so clearly is while hiking up narrow stretches of the trail, you could hear herds of yaks and donkeys coming, and if you heard this, you'd have to stumble to the side of the trail and almost hold on to the side of the mountain as you let them pass. And I think this is an example of the cross cultures that occur on these trails constantly. Also, the only way to transport people and materials back and forth from the mainland in Nepal to the mountain region is either a extra 2-day trek on foot or a plane ride to Lukla Airport, which just happens to be the deadliest airport in the world, coming in at a 9,000-foot elevation and a runway just under 2,000 feet long. If you need any kind of comparison, LAX has a 12,000-foot long runway, so we're looking at 12,000 feet versus 2,000. When I traveled from Kathmandu, which is the capital of Nepal, I took a 10-person plane into Lukla Airport, and as you can imagine, being the motion sickness prone and the anxiety prone 21-year-old that I am, this did not go well for me. The plane stayed lower than most of the mountains almost the entire time, and so much of the flight was spent weaving in and out of these huge mountains. It felt like a scene from a movie, but don't let the plane scare you. This place and these people and the food and the views and just the travel in general is really amazing, and I can safely say that there is something for everyone. You could do a 1-day trek and stay in a hotel with Wi-Fi and an ATM and shopping, or of course you could conquer something much larger like, let's say, Everest. What is so unique about traveling here is that in the mountains there are villages filled with communities of people and schools and farms. I'm talking 5, 10, 15,000 feet above sea level, and if you remember, the only way to get things up and down from the mountains is by foot. And so these entire communities have just been built on foot by people and manpower. It is simply amazing to me. And in these remote parts of the world is where Sherpas and Sherpa culture resides, which is what I want to talk to you about today. A Sherpa is essentially a mountain guide, or as National Geographic names them, the invisible men of Everest. But Sherpa people are actually an ethnic group residing almost entirely in the Everest region. Many men and even a few women in this culture train to become Sherpas, and these are the people who accompany and help climbers to the top of wherever they want to go. Some Sherpas have summited Everest upwards of 20 times and take much pride in their physical fitness and knowledge of the mountain. They are also experts in carrying weight, and I can personally attest to this. I saw some Sherpas running uphill carrying more than 200 pounds of backpack weight, and others who carried these giant slabs of wood and metal and stone on their backs. One Sherpa that I know, named Nima, is actually attempting to set a new world record for an Everest marathon. You heard that right. I said marathon. He's able to run up and down and in and out of the Everest region with ease, and it is truly, truly remarkable. So, accompanied with their Sherpas, as we know every year, some of the best climbers around buy a permit and attempt to summit and stand on top of the world on Mount Everest. What's remarkable, though, and what I really would like to get into today, is just how little policing goes into who is allowed a permit to summit and who is not. The flat rate for an Everest permit in Nepal is $11,000 US. But when you take into consideration paying for a Sherpa, equipment, and travel, you're looking at upwards of $45,000 US. But if you can pay, you can go. I mean, this astounded me. There are no physical fitness qualifications, no proof of experience, knowledge, or prior climbing. If you can pay, you can go. And as you can imagine, this has been causing problems in Nepal and Tibet and surrounding areas for years. You may have heard of what is referred to as the deadliest day on Everest in May of 1996, where more than 11 climbers and Sherpas died attempting to summit. You also may be familiar with the movie starring Jake Gyllenhaal or the book Into Thin Air by Jon Krakauer remarking that very day. Well, a story I will not forget from that book and from that day is the telling of a New York socialite who was on the mountain and who strapped herself to the back of her Sherpa in order to summit after refusing to turn around. Krakauer writes this line: "The Sherpa, huffing and puffing loudly, was hauling the assertive New Yorker up the steep slope like a horse pulling a plow." This, to me, just doesn't seem right. I mean, as I talked to more and more Sherpas, I came to understand that unfortunately this is not a particularly unique situation. One of the best parts of traveling is beginning to understand different areas of the world, and what comes to mind is this "you have to see it to believe it" phenomenon. Making yourself uncomfortable, asking hard questions, and scratching past the surface has been a crucial part of travel for me. And something that came of this while traveling in Nepal is understanding that there really is a right way and a wrong way to travel. I think as we travel to any place, it's important to consider your impact on those people and that place. So next time you travel, do some research, ask some questions, and make sure you know what you're getting yourself into. I think the real problem here, and what has helped change the way that I look at travel, is the impact that the lack of policing has on the Sherpas and their families. This is certainly a government issue, but as I learned, Nepal is a low-income country. It has been continually struggling, especially after the 2015 earthquake, and the Nepalese government really heavily relies on the money they make from the permits. Now, I don't have a solution to this problem. I don't know if anyone does, but this information is going to be important for the story I'm going to tell you after break of two widows who summited Everest in honor of their husbands who died on the mountain while on the job. Stay tuned.
Do you want to be healthier, yet you just don't know what to do? All these shows telling you this and that, but nothing seems to work. Well, listen close. Golden State Media Concepts has got something great for you. The Health and Wellness Podcast, dedicated to workout trends, healthy eating habits, diet, and everything about healthy living. Join us in our banters as we help you not just live life to the fullest, but live it to the healthiest.
Travel to me is so important in order to make yourself grow. And I think the way that I look at it and the way that I see it in other people is when you live in the same place for a long time, or you stay in the same place for a long time, you will be growing in one particular way. But when you start to travel, and if you start to live different places or even just visit and experience, you kind of start to grow in these diagonal ways, and you grow up and out away from people who live near you. And that to me became interesting, and I think I started traveling in an attempt to grow in different ways. And so, with that being said, I cannot think of a more perfect story of a way that made me grow like this one. So without further ado, here is the story of the two widows. Verdika Sherpa and Nima Doma Sherpa are two women living in the Everest region of Nepal. They are from different villages with different families and histories, but unfortunately, a tragedy ended up bringing them together. Both of their husbands passed away in 2013 and 2014, respectively, during excursions to Everest. And it is stories like these and people like these and experiences like these that remind me why I travel, and they really give me that fuel that I need to keep traveling throughout my life. And I hope, if nothing else, this is your reason to keep traveling or to start traveling. I mean, these are people that I never would have met under any other circumstance, and it's a story that I just don't think I will ever forget. And they were so open with me, having not really known me, and I think that is something so special. And I obviously could never imagine what it would be like to lose a spouse, but meeting with them and talking with them was so surreal that it really began to open up my eyes. It was raw and painful to talk about and hard to listen to at times, and everyone in the room was crying, including myself. The women had actually just descended off of Everest, and the only way you could tell was because their faces were still sunburned. They explained that they wanted to summit Everest to honor the death of their husbands and to show other widows that they were not powerless. Not just widows in Sherpa culture, but widows around the world. They explained that many people in their village were not actually in favor of this. They were both mothers of small children, and people were worried that they would not make it back, which would leave their children orphaned. Additionally, they had to spend so much time and energy training and preparing, which to many people in their village meant less time with their families and with their children, and this, of course, was not favored. Despite this, they found each other, began training, and ultimately conquered the mountain. I mean, these two women are in their 30s and in their 40s, and it is such an inspiration to me as a woman and as someone who loves to travel that just because something terrible happened in their life does not mean that their life is over. Their life is continuing, and now they are an amazing role model for so many women around the world. The women also explained that they feel that there is very little recognition worldwide for Sherpas. They told us that they wish that Sherpas who were constantly putting their lives on the line would be mentioned as often as the Western climbers who summit. They described it as a gap in media and recognition. They also wish that Sherpas would be paid more given the nature of their job. Many Sherpas suffer injuries and frostbite given the nature of their job, of course, and when they leave their homes, they always run the risk of not returning. The widows also informed me that for every 1.5 cylinder of oxygen that a Sherpa has, their clients have 5 oxygen tanks. And they are constantly having to run on this limited supply basis. Now, here is a recording of one of the women explaining what a lack of preparation imposes on a Sherpa with the help of a translator. Given the circumstances of recording, the quality is unfortunately quite low in this clip, and you can even hear someone chopping up vegetables, making us dinner in the background. But I feel it is important to hear this clip because even if you don't speak Nepalese, you truly can hear the passion in this woman's voice when she is talking. So let's listen now.
So Sherpas are carrying like 25 kilos. So 25 kilos is over 50 pounds. And so these members are coming there not well trained. And so, they really trained for this expedition. So where they knew like a lot of these, the harness, putting the crampons, the roping system. So even like uses of oxygen cylinder. So they saw with their first how much time like each Sherpa was using their time to help these clients. So they felt bad for the Sherpas.
Getting to meet these women was an honor and a reminder of why I travel. If you want to read more about these widows, I suggest reading the Time magazine article that was written for them. It's time for another break, but when we come back, I'm going to be talking to you about what you want in your backpack for traveling. Before the break, I talked to you about Everest and told you the story of 2 widows who, against all odds, were able to conquer the mountain and summit Everest. Switching gears a bit, I'm going to talk to you about how to be most prepared for any trip you want to take, whether it be backpacking or hiking or a luxury trip. These are going to be 10 items that you need in your bag while you are traveling anywhere. And my packing typically revolves around 3 primary criteria: money, space, and weight. And I have considered all of these things when choosing my top 10. So without further ado, here are my top 10 items that you need in your backpack for your next trip. Getting right into it, we have number 1, which is a water filtration system. 25% of the world does not have safe drinking water, and drinking water in places that we have not built up an immunity to can be detrimental to our health and even our trips. There are many different reliable options to have clean water, but the first thing that you need, even if you are just going across the state, across the country, is a reusable water bottle. There is not much to say about this, guys. If you don't have a reusable water bottle yet, you have got to get one just to have in your life in general. This is a great way to keep you hydrated, and this is going to be an important part to our water filtration system. So, most water filtration systems are personal preference. There's actually a lot of good water filtration systems on the market. My personal favorite is called a SteriPen, and a SteriPen is a small object. You stir it into your water, and it essentially zaps out bacteria. SteriPens are long-lasting, and they're battery-operated. They run from $50 to $110, and they are very good for long trips. Our next option are water filtration tabs. These are extremely small and extremely light. You just drop them into your water bottle. The only downside is that you usually have to wait 3 to 4 hours to fully enjoy your safe drinking water. I would suggest these only on short trips because you will have to plan exactly how many tabs you want to take. These are a very inexpensive option, running from about $3 to $10. Moving to another option, which is a push water filter. A push water filter is essentially a water bottle that you physically and manually press out any bacteria that could be residing in that water. These are expensive at about $70, but they last forever, and you probably will never have to buy a second one. They can push through thousands of gallons of water. The only downside is manually pushing down on that water bottle can be a bit of a hassle, especially if you are on hiking or backpacking trips. It's pretty much the last thing that I want to do after a long day. So I would suggest these for a more luxurious or relaxed trip. Lastly, we have a Sawyer straw or a Life straw. These are filters in a straw form, and they are small and light. These are highly rated, not my personal favorite. I find them a bit messy and hard to deal with, but they do last forever. Similarly to that push filter, they are going to be able to process thousands of gallons of water. Okay, number 1 was our water filtration system. Number 2 is going to be baby wipes or wet wipes. You can use them in the bathroom to wash your hands. If you don't have access to a shower, you can use them on your body. They take off makeup, they clean headphones, they clean your cell phone. These are so helpful for any trip that you are taking. I always have at least one pack with me. And just one quick tip, it is important that you buy a biodegradable type to make sure that they are environmentally conscious. I prefer 7th generation. You can buy these at almost any convenience store and almost any large shopping store. Moving on to number 3. This is one of my favorite things to take with me on any trip I go to because I always feel like it saves me so much, and this is a sleeping bag liner. Essentially, a bag liner is a sheet in the shape of a sleeping bag, and it's traditionally used while camping, but in the last few years, I've been using this liner for travel everywhere. I use this on airplanes, obviously, on trains, on any place I'm traveling to and from, but what I have really been using it for is actually if I'm staying in a hostel or a hotel that isn't as sanitary, you can sleep inside of this. You can use this as a pillow. It really does have a multi-use, and the best part about it is it packs up into about the size of your fist. So I would highly recommend picking up one of these for your next travel adventure. Number 4 is going to be baking soda or coconut oil. Baking soda is an extremely versatile product. It can clean your teeth, it can clean your face, it can wash your hair. You can obviously use it on clothes. It helps with stench. This is an object that you want to have. Coconut oil does almost the same thing. remembering our money, space, weight criteria, baking soda is going to absolutely do the trick for that. It's light, it's inexpensive, it does not take up a lot of room. Coconut oil is a little bit heavier, takes up a little bit more room, but I love coconut oil if I can spare that in my bag. It smells good, it makes me feel pampered, and one of the number one objects that I heard from people when I asked them what they can't travel without was chapstick. And coconut oil also works perfect for chapstick. And so number 4, baking soda or coconut oil. Okay, moving on to number 5 before we take a quick break is going to be a light down jacket. Now, this might seem so extreme if anyone is going to a warm or a tropical climate, but let me just say that being cold on an airplane, in an airport, if there's any AC blowing on me in a car or a bus or a train, it makes it impossible to sleep. A light down jacket can be used as a pillow. Obviously, it can be used as a piece of clothing. I love to have something clean to wear to the airport if I've gone on a trip. And so I will take a stuffable light down jacket. I will keep it in my bag with me the whole time, and just putting that on in the airport on your way back from a trip when all of your clothes are dirty feels so good. And one of the best parts about a down jacket is it doesn't take in stench very easily, so it stays really, really clean. So make sure you have a light down jacket in your bag no matter where you're going. All right, we are going to take a break, but when we come back, I'm going to tell you why you need to have dark chocolate in your bag at all times when you're traveling, along with 4 other tips.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Must-have items in your backpack while you're traveling. That included a water filtration system, baby wipes, a sleeping bag liner, baking soda or coconut oil, and of course a light down jacket. And moving right on to number 6 is going to be probably my biggest learning curve I've ever had in travel, and my life has changed after I started carrying this around, which is what I like to call an information portfolio. This is going to be a very small bag or folder, something that you can safely carry paper in. I like to put a plastic baggie around mine. You are going to have an extra copy of every piece of information that you have brought with you. That could be your license, your passport, your credit card, any information you're already carrying with you. You should make a copy of and put in a separate place that you are holding those items. And the reason for this is you do not want to be in a foreign country and not have access to that information. A quick anecdote: I was on a 3-month-long backpacking trip, and on day 1, I was in an airport and I got my credit card stolen. And essentially, because I was across the world and didn't have access to any of my banking information or the credit card number, I was not only unable to cancel the credit card, but I was unable to receive another credit card. And you could just say that my next 3 months were very frugal. I do not want this to happen to you, and so make sure you have an information portfolio with you in your bag at all times. A extra precaution that you can take is emailing all of that information to yourself if you'll have access to the internet. And of course, you could leave that set of information with a trusted family member or friend that you could potentially call and contact that information as well. Moving on to number 7. I know this may seem self-explanatory, but my travel life was changed once I started carrying these 2 items around, and that is earplugs and an eye mask. And I just added these to my bag, and I always found that they came in handy kind of at the right times. So I always have a really hard time sleeping on planes or buses or anything like that. As I mentioned before, I am a highly motion sick individual, and when I started using earplugs and an eye mask, it made me be able to sleep easier, essentially. So whether that be on a plane ride with a baby that has been screaming, or if you're on a bus and you haven't slept in 30 hours and you need it to be dark, these are just 2 things to stick inside of your bag for any case scenario you might need it. Number 8 is bar soap everything. For those of you who do not know, it is now possible to buy almost any toiletry product that you need in bar soap form, whether that be shampoo, conditioner, toothpaste, face wash, deodorant, anything that you can think of can be purchased in bar soap form. This is going to save us, of course, money, space, and weight. Not having a water-based product is huge for travel, not only because it is going to last you a very long time, but also you do not have to worry about traveling with them. You can stick them in your bag and they are 100% good to go on planes. I was a little worried about switching at first because I thought that it would be less sanitary or messier, and this has just cleaned up my life. I purchased my products at Lush and enjoy them very much. They're all vegan, which is a wonderful added bonus and just something that has completely changed my regular life and my travel life. So make sure you pick up bar soap everything. Moving to number 9 is a object that I'm sure almost every hiker has in their repertoire, but I have been using this for all of my regular travel. For instance, I'm taking a trip to Paris very soon, and I cannot wait to use this so that I can pack twice the amount of clothes that I would otherwise, and that is a stuff sack. So anything that I have mentioned in my top 10 so far will all fit inside of a stuff sack. And if you don't know what that is, it is essentially a bag that you put all of your items in, and then it helps press out the air in between your items. This is going to free up so much space. I love this because I feel like I can bring, like I said, twice as much clothes, or if I want to, I have room to go shopping and bring back items. It's not just for clothes. You can put almost anything inside of it, and it just sucks all the air out in between. It is super helpful and a big space saver. Okay, and my number 10 item that you absolutely need while you're traveling, I hinted it before, it's dark chocolate. Dark chocolate is nutritious. It is so good. It has a powerful source of antioxidants in them. It improves your blood flow and low blood sugar. And of course, who doesn't want a snack when they're traveling? I have been carrying dark chocolate around with me for a long time. I always forget about it until the exact right time, and it just tastes so good, especially if you've been on a hiking trip where you haven't been having sweet things, or you're in an airport and you just need an extra boost of energy. Carrying dark chocolate with you, or whatever your comfort food may be, is so important because we do not want to be cranky while we're traveling. We want to be satisfied and energized, and having dark chocolate in your bag is going to just fill you right up. Also, an added bonus, dark chocolate is supposed to help you with your jet lag. So make sure you have dark chocolate in your bag, as well as these 9 other things I've mentioned to make your travel life so much easier. So one more time, I'm going to run through my top 10 before we take another break. Number 1, a water filtration system. Number 2, baby wipes. Number 3, a sleeping bag liner. Number 4, baking soda or coconut oil. Number 5, a down jacket. Number 6, an information portfolio. Number 7, of course, your earplugs. Number 8, bar soap everything. Number 9, a stuff sack. And number 10, dark chocolate. After the break, I'm going to tell you why you need to be traveling to Europe right now.
Always on the go, but the day just won't be one without your Hollywood fix. Let Golden State Media Concepts Entertainment Podcast take care of that. Jordan and Keith is Entertainment Tonight meets Access Hollywood.
I'm Jordan. The guy laughing, that's Keith.
Yeah, I'm Keith. An all-inclusive look of pop culture.
Necessities you need to pack in your bag for your next trip. And I'm going to switch gears a little bit right now and start a segment that I like to call What's Coming Down the Travel Pipeline. So I am going to talk to you about why you need to travel to Europe this year. It is no surprise that the U.S. has started to have strained relationships with different countries, and border control and border patrol has just become much more popular around the world. And so starting in the year 2021, if you are a U.S. citizen, you will need to apply for what is called an ETIAS, or European Travel Information and Authorization System, in order to enter 22 different countries in Europe. These 22 countries include some of the most popular travel destinations for U.S. citizens, which are Italy, France, and Germany. And not only will you essentially be applying for a visa for leisure travel, but your time is going to start to be limited in those countries. This, of course, has been causing lots of problems and will continue to cause problems as many Americans enjoy the leisure that they are able to have and the freedom that they are able to have while traveling in Europe. So, according to the ETIAS visa website, there are currently no Europe visa travel waivers for U.S. citizens for periods of less than 90 days. However, this will change by the end of 2021 when American citizens traveling to Europe from the U.S. will require an ETIAS visa waiver to travel to any of these countries that are in this zone and in this agreement for, quote, short stays. Now, you will also have to apply to this ETIAS visa at least 15 days before traveling, and I think that this is going to be one of the things that is kind of the most inconvenient for Americans, as so many Americans, including myself, really take advantage of the fact that there are free borders in Europe, and how lots of people are backpacking, going on quick trips, going on spontaneous trips, and this is all about to come to an end, essentially. And so here are some things that you will need to actually just apply for this visa. A completed visa application form, copies of previous issued visa forms, a valid passport containing at least 2 blank pages, any accommodation bookings for the traveler that has made their stay, round-trip flight tickets, or tickets to an onward destination, which this is one of them that really hurt me because a lot of times I know so many people who just want to buy a one-way ticket, and this is about to be a lot less spontaneous. and they also need proof of sufficient financial means to cover their stay in Europe. This, of course, rubbed me the wrong way. Travel insurance that covers medical care in these areas, recent passport-size photo, graph of the traveler taken against a white background. This list goes on. And so to make a long story short, it is just about to get a lot harder to travel through Europe. And so if this is a trip you've always wanted to do, now is truly your time to go. 2020 is your year for travel to Europe. Get in all of those countries you can before this new rule starts to take over. I think some important information to have is actually the few countries that are not in this agreement, and those include the United Kingdom, the Republic of Ireland, Romania, Bulgaria, Croatia, and Cyprus. And so you might want to hold off traveling to those places until after 2021. Okay, our time is almost up today, but before we go, I could not leave this podcast without telling you the story of a Yeti scalp that I saw while in Nepal. So if you're interested, stay tuned. We'll be back right after this commercial break.
Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? The GSMC America's Still Beautiful podcast is a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts America's Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today. Download the GSMC America's Still Beautiful podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Strangest traveling experiences that happened while I was in Nepal. This is truly a sight that you could only see in the most remote areas of the world, and if this isn't a reason to go out and travel and see something new, I don't know what is. Okay, so do you remember what a Yeti is? You know, like Bigfoot, the abominable snowman. Well, the legend of the Yeti, or Minche as they call it, runs rampant through the Everest region. I have talked to so many Sherpas, so many different people who have said that they've seen Yetis, they've seen Yeti footprints, they've heard them. It is very present in this area, and I'm not gonna say whether or not I believe in this or don't. I today am just going to tell you the story of what I saw with my own two eyes. And I also think it's really important to acknowledge the trust that was given to me to be able to see this, and I always want to respect any culture that I'm going to, and so I will leave it up to everyone in the audience to do any further research they'd wish to. I am just going to tell you what was told to me and what I saw with my own two eyes. So, my story starts in the Kumjum village of Nepal at about 12,000 feet elevation. My destination was the base camp of Amadablam, which is about 15,000 feet, so we are taking the day to acclimate to the elevation. The village itself was rich with culture and held these remarkable views. It was in almost this valley way up in the air, and so you could see down to all of the other villages. And something really unique about this village was all of the green roofs. And we learned that we were invited to this Buddhist monastery that was on the outskirts of town, and so we walked up the many steps and we were kind of looking down onto the town, and we waited outside the monastery for a while because the monk was actually running from one village to the next. And so we waited outside for the monk, and the whole time the Sherpas that I was with were saying that they had something to show us. And so finally the monk arrived, looking exactly what you would think a monk would look like. He had a shaved head. He was quite round. He was wearing these beautiful red and yellow but very simple robes. And he led us inside to what I could hardly believe. I truly think if I didn't see this with my own eyes, I wouldn't believe me. But he led us into the monastery, and we took our shoes off, and I remember it being really cold inside because there was no sunlight, and of course we are 12,000 feet in the air, and so it's quite cold already. And the actual inside was very beautiful. There's a place to pray, there was a place to sit, there were lots of different artifacts, but there was this box. And we all gathered around the box, and the monk started talking, and the Sherpa was translating for us, and he was telling us how this very monastery was very unique because it held this artifact, which was a Yeti scalp and a Yeti hand. And it was locked inside of this box, and so he had to actually get a lock and open it up. When he opened it up, I had to double take. It was literally the top of a scalp. So there was hair. there was this like very dark red short hair. And next to it was this hand that had to, I'm looking at my hand now, and this hand had to be 3 times the size of mine, with these just long, huge fingers is what I really particularly remember. And we saw and we looked around, and it was in this cage because it's very precious, obviously, and they were saying how this Yeti scalp and hand had been passed down, and they told us how they got the Yeti scalp in the first place, and that was that long ago the Yetis would watch farmers, and the farmers knew that the Yetis were watching, and the Yetis loved imitating the farmers. And so one night the farmers kind of played a trick on these Yetis, and they pretended to drink a lot of alcohol, and they pretended to fight each other. And then they went inside and they left real alcohol out and real knives, and apparently the Yetis fought each other to death while they were drunk, and one of the Yetis scalped the other one, and that is how that very scalp got to be where it is, and that is where the hand came from. Now, this scalp and hand is certainly a sight that a lot of people like to see, and I know for a fact that a lot of people who try to hunt Yetis and Bigfoot travel all the way up here just to see the hand and the scalp. And of course I can't tell you if it is real or not, but I will sure say that it looked very realistic to what I would imagine a Yeti hand and a Yeti scalp would be. And so maybe I will leave that up to you whether or not it is real. But I certainly saw it, and I know that the monk certainly believed it, and I know that the Sherpa certainly believed it. And so I have to say to this day that that is one of the strangest things I've ever seen while I was traveling, and I would like to think that I've seen quite a lot. That is going to end our episode for today. If you liked what you heard, don't forget to listen to the next episode where I'm going to be talking about the best places in Europe to travel to. And of course, to pair with that, I'm going to give you all of my travel hacks on how to efficiently pack for a week in Europe. Thank you so much for listening to the GSMC Travel Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I would like to ask you to please remember to subscribe to the show and write us a nice review. That really helps us out. Also, if you could please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you so much, and have a great night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Travel Podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type in GSMC to find all of our shows from the GSMC Podcast Network. From travel to health and wellness to entertainment and life and happiness to sex and relationships. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's episode of the Golden State Media Concepts Travel Podcast.